Okay, I'm going to show you how to create the figure that you need and all the data you need for assignment 4, which is the long-term climate analysis. I have some hot water started on the stove for tea, so I'm going to pause at some point in this video and run up and get that. So just beware. Okay, so I'll go over some of this in class, but just to walk you through all of the steps, you're first going to search for ClimDB, which is a climate database. And so here that first hit is ClimDB. And the web page will look like this. We're going to click on this link here that says Data, Plots, and Downloads. And when you get this, you'll see a series of sites listed. That's what's in this first window up here. And in class, I assign you a particular site, so go through and find that site. Now, the one site you cannot do, or nobody is assigned, is the shortgrass step, which I'm going to use for example. So I'm going to select that, and then I have to enter my name, or I don't have to enter my name, I have to enter a name. Do put Colorado State University, and then just put class project. So if you don't feel comfortable putting your name, you can just make one up. Okay, so you might have several meteorological stations listed here. Just pick the first one. You might also have a site that has another set of windows down here for gauging stations. Ignore those. Those are for stream flow, and we're doing climate data. So pick the first station, and then you're going to need to select Tmax, Tme, and Tmin. So if I just click on the first one, and then hold down the Shift key and select the last one, it'll highlight all three of those and hit submit. And then here it just gives me a summary of the data. So you can see they started collecting it on January 1st of 1969, and they stopped the data collection on, what is that, July 1st of 2011. Now, in the assignment description, it says you need to get 16 years of data. Sorry, not 16. I don't know why I said 16. 15 years of data. So in order to do that, and you want full years of data, remember, not partial years. So 2011 is a partial year. So that's not, we don't want that, okay? We want a full year of data because we're going to take annual averages of the temperature. And if we're missing part of the year, that data is going to be inaccurate. So I'm going to go back and collect 2010. And so you can see this is the end date. So I want it to end so I get all of 2010. And then to get 15 years of data, I would have to start in 1996 on January 1st. So now I have 15 full years of data. You need to select the daily data. Now you can see you can select monthly and yearly. And so you could select yearly and just plot that up. But you have to turn in your Excel spreadsheet where you start with daily data and then show me that you can do the averages. So you have to select daily or else you won't get any points. If you don't do this step, you get 0 points on the assignment. So make sure you do this. And then select a comma delimited file on the right there and hit submit. Now you're going to get your data in one of two ways. It might, well, let's just see what happens to mine. Okay, so you can see that little icon flash across the screen or fly across the screen. It put it in my downloads folder so I can open it from there. Sometimes it'll open it automatically in Excel. So if you end up having trouble opening it, definitely shoot or send Dan or I an email and get some help. But what I'm going to do, since I just downloaded the file, I'm going to open Excel in a blank workbook. And then I'm going to go to File. Oh, you can't see me doing this, but that's okay for now. I'm going to File, Open, and then just go find that data. Click that. And it's going to dump it into Excel for me. Okay, so now this is the sheet we're going to work with. Two things to do. Well, the first thing to do right away is save this as an Excel file. Right now it's saved as a CSV file. And CSV is just a text file. It cannot save formulas or figures or anything else. It can just save the numbers and the letters. So first you want to go to File and Save As, or however you would save this file. And you can see in this window under File Format here, it says comma separated values. That's no good. So select the Excel workbook, so XLSX or XLS if you don't have a newer version of Excel. And for right now, I'm just going to leave the name the same, but you might change the name of the file to something, you know, F310 assignment 4 or something like that. Okay, so now that I have it saved as an Excel file, any calculations I do, the figures that I create, they'll all be saved here and you won't lose all of your work. Okay, the first thing we need to do, oh, sorry. You're learning, I'm not very linear in how I think. What you always want to do when you're getting data online somewhere is save it in the raw format that you downloaded it. So in this first sheet here, I don't want to touch anything. If I mess up along the way, I can always go back to this original data and start over, and I don't have to go download it again. So it's always good practice to save this data, and I usually change the name of the sheet, you can see me doing this in the bottom left, to raw, but you don't have to do that. But then I'm going to select this little corner button, just click on there, it's not really a button, but if you click on that little cell, it's going to highlight the whole spreadsheet. I'm going to copy this and paste it into this new sheet. Now I can manipulate this data, and if I mess up again, I have the original data. All right, what you need to do for this particular assignment is we're going to create a column that just has the year in it. So you can see column C is the date. It's got month, day, year. The problem is when we go to do subtotals, like calculating things at monthly or yearly timescales, it's really hard to use dates in this format. It's better to separate out the day, the month, and the year. For this particular assignment, we only need the year. For the next one, we'll need month. This one, we only need the year. So you can see I selected all of column D. I'm going to go to Insert. And then I actually don't know how to use these tabs very well because I use other buttons, but I'm going to try to do it this way. Except for I'm probably going to not find it. All right, I'm not going to do this. It's going to take forever. Insert a column. For me, if I'm on a Mac, I can do Control Insert. I think on a Windows, then you would do right click and insert, and I get a new column. I'm going to put a header. It's always good to put a header so you know what data's in there. Should probably spell it right. Okay. Now what we can do is we can extract the year from column C and put it into column D, and then we can ignore the month and the day. So the way we do that is we're going to type a formula. So anytime we have a formula, you start with equals, and then the name of the formula is year. I'm going to put an opening parentheses, sorry, not an asterisk, an opening parentheses, and then it needs to know what cell you want to get the year from. So I'm just going to click on the first cell in column C, or the first data cell in column C, put in a clothing parentheses, and now I've got my year. But you can see it's trying to put it in the same format as the date in column C. So what you have to do is go back up to this cell that you just created and change the format to general. So if you go back to your Home tab, and in the middle here, this is your formatting of the cells. So change that to general, okay? You can also go up to if you have a menu at the top, you can go under format and find that same thing. But you can see after I changed the formatting, now it says 1996, that's the year we're looking for. So that's perfect. Now we need to copy and paste this formula all the way down. And the easiest way to do that is if you see this little green square in the bottom right hand corner of the selected cell, if you hover over it, your icon will change. Once your icon changes, double click on that and it's going to fill that entire column in. So you don't have to just drag it down. Okay? So you can see it changed to 1997. Okay, my water is ready for tea. So I'm going to pause it and we'll come back and do the next step. Okay, I'm back. So now we have this column with all of our years in it. So now what we're going to do is calculate the annual average of each variable, each temperature variable that we downloaded. So we're going to take the annual average of this first one here, which you can see that the header is air temp abs max C, which is our maximum daily temperature. We're going to do it for the mean daily temperature, which is column G, and then the minimum daily temperature, which is column I. So it's quite easy to do this. What you're going to do is the best way, I think, the way that I typically do it is highlight your whole worksheet. Again, if you click in this upper left-hand cell, you're going to select the whole worksheet. Go to the Data tab, and then to the right, on the far right, there should be a button called Subtotals. Click that. Now, what this does is you're going to select a couple different columns. So you're going to select one column, which is the categories you want to use for making your averages. For us, that category is each year. All right, so we want to find every row that is 1996 and then average all the temperatures in those same rows. And then do the same thing for 1997, 1998. So the category row that we want, and again, in our case is year, that's what you select in this top one. At each change in year, so that means it's going to go through and find each change in year. And once the year changes, it's going to kind of go back up to all the rows above it and take the average of that. All right. So the function we want to do then is the average, because we're calculating the average annual temperature. And you can see there's different functions. So we're going to use sum in our next assignment, but there's other things here that might be useful for other assignments. So for this one, we're going to take the average, and then we need to take the average of three variables, right? Air temp max, the maximum daily to air temperature, the mean daily, and the minimum daily. And then I can unselect this bottom one, that bottom flag. By default, you'll have these two options selected, and I think you want to select both of those. The replace current subtotals, if you end up doing multiple steps with multiple subtotals, you might want to leave the existing subtotals when you add new ones. I just always do replacing so I don't get confused. But once you have all of those options selected, hit OK. And then if you notice over here in the top left, now we have three numbers, 1, 2, and 3. Those are like layers. So we have 3 layers of this individual worksheet. Layer 3 is the one with all of your data. If you scroll down to the bottom of the first year, scroll down, you can see here we have a new row inserted into our spreadsheet. This is the average of 1996. So here's the average daily maximum, the average daily mean, and the average daily minimum for 1996. And then it has that same subtotal under each year. Now this is actually what we want to plot. But right now you'd have to go through and copy and paste all of these to a different sheet. There's a little bit, well, maybe it's easier. There's another way to do it. If you select layer 2 in the top left corner and then go back to the top, you'll see it shows us just those subtotals. Also notice that in addition to the 15 years of data we requested or we wanted data from, it also gives a grand total. And it always does this. It gives you the grand total no matter what you ask for. Sometimes that's beneficial. In the next assignment, it'll actually be beneficial. Sometimes it won't be. If you want to see just the grand total, you can select layer 1. So we're going to work on layer 2. All right, now what we need to do is take this data and plot it up. Now, this part's a little bit confusing. Right now we're on layer 2 and we're only looking at our subtotals. But what we can't see is that our raw data is still in this worksheet. And so if we were to select those 15 averages to plot and copy and paste that, it wouldn't just copy and paste our subtotals. It would copy and paste all the data that we can't see right now that's in between these subtotals. So basically you'd just be copying your same old sheet to a new place. The way to get just these subtotals is there's a way to copy just the visible cells, all right? And I might have to pause this because I'm going to try to show you a way to do it from these tabs. And I always forget how to do it from the tabs because it's not how I usually do it. So I'm going to pause it, find it, and then we'll come back. Okay, found it. If you can't, like if for some reason you're ever looking for it, just search visible cells only Excel and it'll tell you how to find it. So in our tabs, I went back to the Home tab. Now on the right-hand side of your screen, there'll be this Find and Select. Click that arrow. You're going to select the Go To option. This window pops up, then you're going to click on Special. This is really buried in the options, isn't it? So once you click Special, you'll have this set of options. Click Visible Cells Only, hit OK. You can see that how our rows are highlighted changed. Now go ahead and copy, however you would copy. So I'm on a Mac, I'm just going to do Command-C. I'm going to create a new worksheet. So I hit that plus sign in the bottom left of the worksheet. So if you hit the plus sign, you'll get a new sheet. And then I'm just going to paste that data. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the row 1, go to Insert, or actually I won't do that. Go to Control, Insert, or right-click Insert. So I can put some headers here to make sure I know what each row is, what the data is. So row B, or column B, sorry, is T max, this is T mean, and this is T min. Now, what you're going to have to do is, or what you should do is, right now these are all, Excel recognizes this as text because you have letters and numbers in this cell. Let's go ahead and just change those to numbers. So you're going to do 1996, 1997. If you do the first two and then highlight the first two and then drag that down, it should fill those in for you. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to highlight these two columns to start with. I'm on the Insert tab here. I'm going to go up to the line graph option here, click that arrow, and I'm just going to select one of the ones that has symbols and lines, just so we can really see where each year of data is. Actually, scratch that. What I actually want you to do is select the scatter plot option, and then over the fourth one over shows these kind of crazy lines with symbols between each one. Let's select that one. And then we'll have our graph with showing year on the x-axis and temperature on the y-axis, and it gives us a title. Now, a couple things we want to do. We're going to get used to doing these in the same way that a scientific article would present them. You may not go into science, you might never publish a paper, that's fine. We're just going to practice it so you're familiar with it. So almost every situation, we're not going to have a title on our graph. The next assignment is going to be the one exception. So for now, we're not going to have a title on your graph, so we're going to delete that. So you can just highlight that text box and delete it. Always, 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 we need a label in units on our axes. So we're going to add a label for the x-axis and the y-axis. So if we go to the left-hand side here, so you can see the tab I'm on is called Chart Design. And then on the far left of that, it says Add Chart Element. I'm going to add an axis title. So I'm going to start with my primary horizontal, which is our x-axis. All right, and then this is, so technically, let's do it like technically. The title of the x-axis is in time, and the units are years, or year. All right, that's the title of our x-axis. Now we need one for our y-axis. So I'm going to go back to the axis titles and do a primary vertical. And I'm just going to call this temperature because we're going to have 3 different types of temperature on here. So I don't want to call it maximum temperature because we're also going to have minimum temperature on here. So just do temperature, and then degrees Celsius, oops. Oops, I forgot the parentheses. We need parentheses. So to figure out how to put degrees, there's a few ways you could do it. What I would recommend is looking up the keyboard shortcut for degrees for your computer. So for me, I Google keyboard shortcut degree Mac, and it gives me that. So if you're on a Mac, that's Option Shift 8 gives you the degrees. If you're on Windows, totally forget what it is. Just Google it and you'll be able to find that symbol. All right. Then, so now I have my y-axis label with units. Make sure I spelled that right. Okay. Now I'm good to go, except for I only have one label on, or one set of data on here. So now what I want to do is we're going to add data to this spreadsheet. All right. So we can do the select data option. And you can see we have Tmax already on here, so we need to add another one. So we're going to add another series. We can call it whatever we want. I'm going to call this mean daily temperature. Okay. So now it wants to know where are the x values for this variable. So if you click this little button on the right-hand side, it'll allow you to drag or highlight the cells you want to add. So for the x-axis, that's our year. So I'm going to highlight all of my years and then hit enter. And that window will expand again. And then it wants to know where my y values are. So I'll click that button again. Now I'm doing mean daily temperature. I'm just going to select those and hit enter. All right. Now I've got my mean daily temperature with those values selected. Tmax is already on there. I'm going to add one more for my minimum daily temperature. So my x values are the same set of data for the years, and my y values are now this minimum column, or column F. Hit OK. Now you can see I've got all three sets of data on this figure. All right, so that's one of the goals of this assignment. Just make sure you're comfortable putting more than one line on a figure in Excel. The key, or one of the keys is putting more than one line on, is that you also have a legend. So people looking at your figure know what line is associated with which data. So we're going to go back up to our add chart element, and there's one for legend. And I'm just going to put it at the right. You have some options on where it puts it. Let's put it at the top. I don't care. You can turn it in however you want. So you can see it has Tmax, mean daily temperature, minimum daily temperature. All right. Now, one thing we need to do before you're going to turn this in is do not leave this as Tmax. All right, because that's not super descriptive. Tmax of what, right? This is the maximum daily temperature averaged to each year. All right, so that's what we want to put here. So we want this to change this legend or the text for this item to make it look more like these other ones. So if we go back up to select data, for Tmax, you can see under the name, it's just taking the header row, the name from the header row. So I'm just going to delete what's in the name box and change it to maximum daily temperature. Hit OK. There we go. All right. So that figure right there would be wonderful to turn in. You've got all three sets of data. You've got a legend. You have labels with units on each axis. That's good for your figure. All right. You can kind of copy and paste this figure into like a Word document and then print that out. That's one of the easiest ways to do it. Or you can Google other ways of printing just this figure. All right, one other thing that you have to turn in with your figure is a table that has and shows how many missing data there are in each year. And the reason I want you to do this is that it's really good practice to not trust the data you get online. Like if you did not collect the data and you don't know how good sorry, I lost my train of thought. If you did not collect the data and you don't know how good it is, you need to assume it's not very good until the data proves itself otherwise. All right, so I want you to get you in the habit of looking closely at the data you download online. The way we're going to do this is let's go back to this second sheet we created where we have those different layers for our subtotals. And remember, our layer 3 is going to show us all of our data. So I'm going to click on layer 3. All right. Now there are several columns here that we didn't talk about. So you can see there's a flag column to the right of each data column. So in column F, it says flag, and then it has a bunch of G's. These are called data flags, and they tell you about the data in the sheet. In this situation, the data flag in column F tells us about the data in column E. So this is a way to start getting a feel for how good the data is. This database is very simple. It only has a few different data flags. The next set of data we're going to do in assignment 5 or 6, whatever the next assignment is, I think it's 5, is going to have a much more complicated data flag. All right. What we're looking for in this particular data set is how many missing data there are in each year. All right. So there's 365 days in most years. If you're missing 300 days or even 150 days of data, you're missing half a year. That tells you that your annual averages aren't necessarily very representative of what's actually happening that year. However, if you have only 20 days of missing data out of 365, that's pretty good. And probably the values we calculate are going to be pretty representative of what's happening in that given year. So it tells you kind of how much you can trust the data, all right? So this step is going to be a little more time consuming, but not terrible. So we're going to use another formula. And so what we're going to do is just over here to the right somewhere. Actually, let's do this. This will make it easier for you. In the same row where you have your subtotals, but off to the right is where we're going to put our formulas. All right. So the formula we're going to use is called COUNTIF. So remember, if you're doing a formula, you start with an equal sign. We're going to do COUNTIF, all one word, in opening parentheses. And then I want to select all of the data flags in this first column, or column F. All right. So for the first one, you can just kind of drag and highlight all of the rows in that column except for the header row. You don't need that, all right? So we've got row 2 through like 366. Oops. All right, let's go back to our formula. I forgot, we weren't quite done yet, all right? So what I did is just fine. You highlight all of those rows. We happen to start with a leap year, so we actually have 366 days in that year. After you highlight those rows and it puts the range of rows you want to look in there, then you do a comma and you tell Excel what you're looking for. So it's going to look in this range of cells and tell you how many times this thing shows up, whatever that thing is. In this case, we're looking for missing data, or the letter M. So in quotes, I'm going to put the capital M and then a closing parentheses. And then it's going to tell me it found 10 M's. That means I have 10 rows of missing data. So we'll just scroll real quick. You can see here in column F, I have a couple M's, and you can see there's definitely no data over there. So that's just missing data for whatever reason. And if we have lots of that, it's kind of a bad thing for us. But if there's only 10, that's pretty good. All right. So that's column F, or that's, I'm going to hit cancel here. That's the missing data for the maximum daily temperature. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this over. So that's column F. If I drag this formula over 2 rows, the first row, it's going to give me the count of M's in column G. There's going to be none. But then it will give me H. All right. So I'll drag it over. There's 0 because that's the actual data. But then there's 10 missing data in the mean daily columns. That's what the second one is. And then if I drag it over 2 more rows, again, there's 10 missing data in the minimum daily temperature column. So these values with 10s, those are the ones we want, all right? So we're just going to leave it like this for now. And we'll come back and get this data in just a second. Now you can see that you did that for year number 1, or the first year in your data set. You're going to have to go through and do that for every year. And again, it's a little bit tedious, but again, it's practice to be like, okay, this is what I have to do to make sure I have good data. All right, it takes some time. It's not super fast. But what we can do is we can just copy this formula. You just have to copy one of them. So I'm going to highlight that first column where we calculated the data flags. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to scroll down to the next subtotal row. And I'm going to paste that formula in here. Now, if we click on this, it's going to show us what the range of cells, and it goes from 368 to 733. So you can see right here it highlights them. It ends in 733, which is perfect. But if we go up, we're going to start too early. You can see it starts in this blank row. And that's because the first year was a leap year and the second year is a non-leap year. All right, so you just have to make sure you're going to have to adjust the range for the years that are leap years and non-leap years. So the way I'm going to do that is come back to here, and then I'm just going to type in 369. F369 is where it's going to start. It's still going to end at F733, which is right here, and we're still looking for an M, so we hit enter. You can see this time I have 26 missing data in that year. Then we're going to drag this over. And you can see for these years, we have missing data for all of them. It won't always be like this, but for these first 2 years, we have the same amount of missing data for all temperature variables. All right? So you're going to go through and do this for every single year. Then, once you're done with that, if you go back to layer 2, it's showing you the rows with your subtotals, and now it's going to show us the rows with all of these values, with all of our data flag values. So once you were to go through every single year, you would go and highlight all of these and copy them to a new sheet. So remember, we're going to go look in the top left. I'm on the Home tab. Now look at the far right. I'm going to the Find and Select, go to Special, Visible Cells Only. Okay, I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to put it in the same sheet as our figure. And I'm going to make a new column, year. I'm going to just go over here. Actually, let's just copy this. Let's just copy A. I'm highlighting the entire column A. I'll do copy, and I'll paste it into column T, or yeah, column T. And then you're going to have to pretend there's more data in here. Do keep in mind these zeros, those are for the data columns. You don't want to report that to me, okay? Because it's just going to be all zeros. So I'm going to highlight column V, and I'm going to go to this tab, Delete tab. I'm going to highlight column W, delete that. Now I just have my data columns. Now you have to label each one of these. So this would be T, you could call it T max missing data. Now in the figure, I told you not to put T max, and that's because I want you to get in the practice in your figures that you're going to present to people. You need everything to be really easily understood. All right, you don't want to use slang, you don't want to use abbreviations too much. So I want that written out in your figure. But in this table, this is just for us, and so you don't need to have it written out. So column U is our missing data for T max. V is T mean missing data. And then W is T min missing data. Okay? So you should have this entire table filled out. Copy and paste it into a Word document just like you did the table. Print that off, and that's what you're going to bring with you. And then you have to submit this Excel sheet online. So on Canvas, submit your Excel sheet so that I can see that you started with daily values and you actually got the subtotals to create your graph. All right. So make sure throughout this process you're hitting save. I just hit save. Or depending on if you're using it on the cloud, obviously it's going to save for you. All right. So that walks you through all the steps. Hopefully that is helpful. Again, if you run into problems, you know, sometimes your version of Excel is different. And I'll be honest, sometimes There's some setting maybe in your version of Microsoft that's a tiny bit different than mine, and it could cause you problems. So, work on it a little bit, Google stuff to try to work it out. But, again, I don't want you spending hours on this assignment. It shouldn't take too long. I don't know how long this video is, but 35 minutes. So it definitely shouldn't take you much longer than 35 minutes. All right.